Welcome back to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. We sift through the sources so you don't have to, finding those key insights and, well, often a few surprises too. Today we're stepping into a world that's usually unseen, vast, untamed, and incredibly important, the wilderness. Just picture it. You're on the edge of this ancient forest. How do you really know what's going on deep inside? How do you track the wildlife, especially the really shy ones, or those critically endangered species you almost never see? This is a huge challenge, right?
It really is.
Think about trying to monitor these environments long term. You've got these amazing animals, often in places that are super remote, really tough habitats, and, well, they don't exactly make it easy for it.
No, they certainly don't.
Traditional methods usually means researchers physically going out there,
Uh,
slogging through difficult terrain, setting up maybe camera traps, trying to spot things by sight or sound. But our sources point out this whole approach is just full of human factors and logistical limitations. That's the phrase they use. We're talking about the sheer effort involved, the time years sometimes. The cost is staggering for sustained fieldwork.
mm,
And maybe the biggest thing, the disturbance. Our being there can actually mess things up.
absolutely.
So how do you get reliable, continuous data without accidentally changing the very behavior you want to observe?
Hmm.
It's a real puzzle for scientists.
It is, and you hit on a key point there, minimizing that disturbance. And while machine learning, ML, it's already doing amazing things in ecology, right?
Yeah, predicting extinction risk, analyzing satellite data.
Exactly. But there are these very specific hurdles when you're talking about observing nature up close, undisturbed. And those hurdles get, well, really high when data is scarce. Like, imagine trying to study the last few individuals of a species.
Right, you barely have any sightings or sounds to go on.
Precisely. Or when your devices need to be totally independent, running for months out there, no human touching them. That's where the usual ML approaches, the really power-hungry ones, they just hit a wall. They become impractical, maybe even impossible to actually deploy in the wild.
Okay, let's unpack this then, because our main topic today is something designed to tackle exactly those problems. It's an always-on TinyML Acoustic Classifier designed for ecological applications. Sounds technical, I know.
It does, but the concept is powerful.
But think of it as a new kind of tool for conservation, a really powerful, almost invisible one. So this deep dive, it's all about how this cutting-edge, low-power tech can basically become a silent guardian for the planet's most vulnerable creatures, listening in without being seen, giving us insights we've, well, mostly just dreamed about before.
And what's really exciting, I think, is we'll explore not just how it works, the techie bits, but why it's such a leap forward. We'll look at the incredible information it can give us, things like tracking bird density, figuring out migration patterns.
All without humans needing to be constantly involved.
Exactly. Autonomously.
Right.
Which frees up those valuable human resources and tackles those logistical nightmares you mentioned earlier.
Perfect. So we're aiming to give you a real understanding, not just of what this tech does, but how it's pushing the boundaries of TinyML itself. Get ready for some aha moments, because this could genuinely change the game for conservation, letting us be better caretakers without always being, intruders. Mm-hmm.
The grand challenge. Monitoring wildlife in the wild.
Okay, so let's really dig into those inherent difficulties. When the sources talk about human factors and logistical limitations, it's not just jargon. You have to picture researchers spending countless hours, sometimes weeks, in really tough conditions.
Often dangerous, too.
Right. Physically crossing difficult terrain, dense jungles, rocky mountains, vast wetlands, whatever it is. Enduring extreme weather, heat, cold, all while trying to find something that, frankly, doesn't want to be found.
It's a huge physical and mental drain, a real endurance test.
And then that's before you even factor in the cost. Sustained field work like that, it just eats through research budgets like crazy.
It really does. Grants only stretch so far.
But maybe more importantly, and this is subtle but so critical, our presence, even if we're trying to be careful, it can change how animals behave.
Definitely.
Imagine trying to study a nocturnal animal, right?
Right.
There's a human nearby, or even just some noisy equipment.
They might just clam up, or
Yeah.
change their routes, or even abandon a nest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do you get unbiased, continuous long-term data if you're accidentally messing with the results just by being there? That's been the core problem for conservationists for, well, forever.
Precisely. And those human factors, they lead directly to really specific ongoing problems in the research. Like, it's incredibly hard to accurately identify species, locate them reliably, and especially figure out their population density. And not just in one spot, but across the huge areas and long timescales that actually matter for understanding an ecosystem.
Right, like tracking migratory birds across continents or even just within a massive national park for a whole year. How do you do that consistently?
It's tough. Remote areas are often just inaccessible or way too expensive to visit regularly, so sustained monitoring is just this constant uphill battle. Traditional methods are also really hard to scale up for long periods. You often just get snapshots, right? Not the continuous story of what's happening.
Little glimpses, not the full movie.
Exactly. And like you said, avoiding altering their natural behavior is absolutely crucial. If our methods change what the animals do, the data is basically useless, scientifically speaking. We desperately need something that's a truly silent observer, a genuine window into their world without us sticking our heads through it.
Well, the good news is machine learning has started to help here. It's becoming, as the sources say, an essential tool in ecology. We've seen amazing things like ML predicting extinction risk or projects like Wildlife Insights using huge data sets to track biodiversity.
Absolutely.
And specifically in audio, there's been great progress in detecting birds, just from their calls, their songs. Bird vocalization analysis.
Yes, that's a burgeoning field. So the promise of ML is definitely there. It's changing how we handle ecological data.
But I sense a but coming.
There's always a but, isn't there? Especially for TinyML. While deep learning, DL, is often the powerhouse behind these big ML applications, it has some specific weaknesses in these critical ecological situations. The big one, DL systems generally do not perform well with sparsely available data.
Sparse data, meaning not many examples.
Exactly, and that's a huge problem for rare or nearly extinct species. Imagine you only have, say, 50 recordings of a bird's call in the entire world.
Right.
Trying to train a big, data-hungry, deep neural network on just 50 examples, it's likely going to struggle. It needs thousands, ideally, to learn properly and generalize.
So it just doesn't work well for the species that need the most help, ironically.
That's often the case. It's like trying to teach facial recognition with only one blurry photo. And then there's the TinyML angle. These systems have very limited computing power and battery life.
Yeah, they have to be small and run for ages.
Right. So to make DL models fit, you often have to compress them dramatically, quantize them, sometimes down to binary neural networks, BNNs, where everything's just a 0 or a 1.
Super efficient for making predictions in the field, I guess.
Exactly. For inference, they're tiny and fast. But here's the catch. Retraining those BNNs, maybe to adapt to a new environment or add a new species, usually requires going back to the original full precision model parameters.
Oh, okay.
And doing that kind of complex retraining on a little IoT device deployed out in the middle of nowhere, it's incredibly difficult, often impossible. They just don't have the horsepower, the memory, or the energy budget.
So it's a fundamental limitation for using that kind of DL on these tiny remote devices.
It really restricts their adaptability in the field.
Okay, that's a critical point. So if deep learning struggles with the rare data and the tiny device constraints, we need a different approach, right? What's a better way to actually listen effectively out there? 2, introducing the game changer, always-on TinyML Acoustic Classifier. And that brings us right to the core of today's deep dive. The researchers behind our sources developed exactly that, a different approach. They call it a lightweight, always-on acoustic classification system, its main job. Identifying the density of specific wildlife species, mostly birds, in their tests within an ecosystem. And the key phrase, the really vital part, is that it's designed to operate effectively where human presence may be undesirable.
Right, in those sensitive habitats.
Exactly. So you can put it out there without disturbing the very animals you're trying to help. It lets us be, truly unobtrusive observers.
That's the goal. And the core innovation is a really fundamental shift away from deep learning for this specific job. Instead, this system uses a template-based support vector machine classifier, an SVM.
SVM. Okay, different type of machine learning.
Right. And the choice of SVM is critical, as we'll get into, especially for handling that sparse data problem we just talked about. It's much better suited for rare species. But it's not just the algorithm, it's how it's built into the hardware. The system cleverly combines acoustic filtering and classification into an in-filter computing and a hardware-friendly platform.
In-filter computing. What does that actually mean in practice?
It means a lot of the initial processing, the filtering of the sound, and pulling out the important features, stuff that usually takes up time and power, happens right inside the acoustic filter itself, right where the sound is captured.
Ah, so it's processing as it hears almost.
Kind of, yeah. It reduces the need to shuffle lots of raw data around the chip, which is a huge power drain on tiny devices. Think of it like pre-digesting the sound right at the source, makes it much easier for the main brain to understand later, and saves a ton of energy.
That sounds really smart. Very efficient.
It's designed for efficiency.
And to make it real for us, they demonstrate this system identifying different bird species using something called audio moth hardware, which is based on an ARM Cortex M4 chip.
Yes, audio moth.
So this isn't just theory. It's a real-world system, putting this new, clever brain inside a device that ecologists are already using and trust.
Exactly. Audio moth is pretty well established in the field. That's a huge advantage for getting this tech adopted quickly and making a real impact. It's like giving a trusted tool a major upgrade. 3, diving deeper into the how, the technology behind the magic. Okay, so let's talk about why SVM, and specifically this template-based SVM, is the right choice here compared to deep learning. It wasn't just a random pick, it was very deliberate, based on the challenges of ecological data. First off, as we touched on, SVMs, and this template SVM design in particular, they perform well with sparse training data.
Right, the rare species problem.
Yeah. Exactly. If you only have maybe a few dozen clean recordings of a bird call, an SVM can often learn effectively from that, whereas a DL model needing thousands of examples would likely fail or give unreliable results. This is crucial for endangered species monitoring.
Makes it. What else?
Secondly, SVM is generally more robust to outliers.
Outliers, like background noise, wind, other animals.
Precisely. Rustling leaves, distant traffic, another bird species calling all potential noise or outliers in the wild. In an SVM, the classification decision is mainly influenced by the data points closest to the boundary between classes. These are called support vectors. This means that random, noisy data points further away have less impact, making the system less prone to being thrown off by background noise. That's obviously super important in a real forest environment.
Okay, so it handles limited data and noisy environments better.
Yes. And thirdly, there's stability. The math behind SVM, its convexity, ensures that retraining is stable and interpretable.
What does stable mean here? Predictable.
Predictable is a good way to put it. If you get new data from the field and need to update the model, the SVM adjusts smoothly. It won't suddenly make wild, unexpected changes in its classifications like some complex neural networks occasionally can.
Oh, okay.
This predictability is really important for scientists. They need to trust that updates improve the model reliably, not introduce weird behavior. It makes iterative improvements in the field much more manageable.
Got it. Reliable, stable learning. So going back to that in-filter computation, how does it actually avoid all the heavy pre-processing that usually kills battery life on tiny devices, creating spectrograms and stuff like that?
Right, that's where the really clever bit of the system's front end comes in. It's not just a standard microphone setup. It uses a neuromorphic Cockley-based system, specifically filters called CAR-IHC filters.
Neuromorphic, meaning inspired by the brain, or the ear in this case.
Exactly. Inspired by the human cochlea, the part of our ear that processes sound so incredibly efficiently. And the key insight is that these filters play a dual role. They act as the pre-processing unit, pulling out the important acoustic features from the sound, and they also function as the nonlinear SVM kernel.
Whoa, okay, so the filter is part of the machine learning classifier, they're merged.
Essentially, yes. Instead of 1, capture sound, 2, do heavy math to extract features like pitch, timbre. 3, send features to the SVM. The CAR-IHC filter effectively is the feature extractor and feeds directly into the SVM decision process. It's tightly integrated.
And that avoids those separate power-hungry pre-processing steps.
Precisely. That's a major power saving. To give you a comparison, these CAR-IHC filters are computationally less expensive than Mel frequency substral coefficients, MFCCs.
MFCCs, I've heard of those, common in audio stuff.
Very common. But they involve things like logarithm calculations, which are quite demanding on a tiny processor. They need more cycles, more power. By using these neuromorphic filters, the system sidesteps those heavy computations, making it ideal for TinyML constraints where every milliwatt counts. The paper also mentions the specific template SVM math. We don't need the equations, but the point is, it's designed to keep the good parts of traditional SVM, the robustness, the ability to generalize well, while being formulated in a way that drastically reduces the memory needed and the calculations required. The outputs of those CAR-IHC filters, the templates, feed directly into this streamlined SVM. It's very elegant.
Okay, that's the clever brain. But it needs ears, right? A physical device to capture the sound. You mentioned AudioMoth. Tell us about that hardware. What makes it the right choice?
Yeah, AudioMoth is a great platform for this. It's described as an ARM Cortex-M4 microcontroller-based system.
Oh.
And crucially, it's already a low-cost acoustic data logger widely used for ecological purposes.
Ah, so ecologists already know it, trust it.
Exactly. That lowers the barrier to entry for adopting this new TinyML system. It's not some totally alien piece of kit. And its specs are well suited for TinyML in the field. It has an EFM32 Gecko processor running at 48 megahertz, decent power for this kind of embedded work. Memory-wise, 256 KB of flash for the program code, 32 KB of fast internal SRAM, plus another 256 KB of external SRAM.
Sounds tiny compared to a phone, but I guess it's enough for this focused task.
For highly optimized bare metal C code like this, it's quite sufficient. They're not running a big operating system. For storage, it takes SD cards up to 128 GB, which is plenty for storing detection logs or even selected audio clips. Power efficiency is key. It has internal amplifiers, so no extra components needed for the mic, and it's designed to run on just 3 lithium AA cell batteries. Very field-friendly.
Standard batteries, easy to replace. That's practical.
Very practical, and the software is open source C, giving developers that fine-grained control needed to squeeze out every bit of performance and efficiency.
And that efficiency enables the always-on capability, which seems vital here. They program it for 24 hours with 0 sleep cycles. It just listens constantly.
That's right. Day and night, rain or shine, it's active. The paper even shows a picture of it deployed strapped to a tree in an IPX7 waterproof case.
Little silent sentinel out there.
Perfectly put. Blending in, always listening. Truly fits that invisible guardian idea.
Okay, so we have the smart algorithm, the right hardware.
Yeah.
How does it all work together? The software, the data flow. How do they make it usable for scientists?
They've clearly put thought into usability. They describe it as an easy-to-deploy framework, a kind of one-stop solution for classifying different bird species. Because, let's face it, most field ecologists aren't necessarily ML engineers, right? They need tools they can actually use without a PhD in computer science.
Definitely. It needs to be practical.
So the software architecture seems pretty logical, following a workflow that makes sense for field research. First, there's a user interface. This lets researchers take their audio recordings, maybe old ones, maybe new ones, and chop them up. Define timeframes, amplitude thresholds, and importantly, it lets them review and discard noisy samples. This is crucial for creating a clean, high-quality training data set. Garbage in, garbage out, especially with sensitive audio.
So you curate the data before training.
Exactly. Meticulous cleanup first. Then comes the training and testing phase. The clean data gets split. Some for training the template SVM, some held back for testing. They use a one versus all training method. So for each bird species, the model learns to tell its call apart from everything else it might hear, not just other target birds, but background noise too.
Makes it more robust in the real world.
Should do. After training, the system spits out the learned parameters, the weights, the bias, info like sampling rate, number of filter channels, number of species it knows. These get packed into simple header files, like a blueprint of the trained model. Then it tests the model on the unseen test data and reports the accuracy for each species, so the researcher knows exactly how well it performs before deploying it.
Confidence check. Good.
Very important. And finally, inference deployment. Those header files containing the trained model parameters, they get compiled into the AudioMoth firmware itself. The firmware already has the template SVM inference engine, the code that knows how to use those parameters to classify new sounds. The whole package engine plus species-specific parameters gets compiled into a small binary file .bin.
And that file gets loaded onto the AudioMoth.
Exactly. You flash it onto the device, and suddenly that AudioMoth is an intelligent listener specifically trained for the target species.
Okay, so now it's deployed, strapped to a tree. What happens in real time? How does the data flow efficiently?
This part is really neat. A great example of TinyML optimization. The microphone picks up sound. The 16-bit audio samples go straight to the internal SRAM. But here's the key. It uses direct memory access. DMA.
DMA. What's the benefit of that?
The huge benefit for low power consumption is that DMA transfers data without involving the main processor. The Cortex-M4 chip isn't bogged down managing the data transfer. It can focus on the actual classification work, saving energy.
Clever. Like having a dedicated delivery service for the data.
Pretty much. Now, that internal SRAM acts as a ping pong buffer. Imagine two small buckets. One is filling up with new audio from the mic. The other is simultaneously dumping its contents to a larger buffer.
Continuous flow.
Right. That larger buffer is an 8-element ring buffer in the external SRAM. It's set up to handle the incoming audio stream smoothly, say at 16,000 samples per second. As 1-second chunks of audio fill up part of this ring buffer, another part of the buffer, holding slightly older audio, is being read and fed into the template SVM inference engine. The engine grabs the necessary weights and bias from the superfast flash memory, processes that 1-second chunk, and makes classification.
All happening in real time.
Yes,
Yeah.
continuously. The classification result, which bird, if any, and the exact timestamp, gets dumped into a detection log stored in the SD card.
Creating that crucial record.
Exactly. And there's an option. If a target species is detected, the system can also save that 1-second audio chunk itself to the SD card.
Oh, so it doesn't have to record everything, just the interesting bits.
Right, which saves a lot of storage space and power compared to just recording continuously. It's intelligent logging.
That makes a huge difference for long deployments.
Absolutely. And this whole cycle, acquire, transfer via DMA, buffer, classify, log, just keeps repeating as long as there's sound coming in. Truly always on, efficient, intelligent listening. 4. The proof is in the chirp. Impressive results and capabilities.
Okay, that's a fascinating deep dive into the how. But let's talk results. What does this actually achieve? How well does it work? What does it mean for conservationists, for us?
The results they present are pretty compelling, yeah. They really highlight the benefits of this template SVM approach. So initially, they trained and tested it on 4 common bird species: common cuckoo, white-throated kingfisher, Asian coal, red-wattled lapwing, sampled at 8 kilohertz, and here's the kicker, trained on just 100 samples per species.
Only 100 examples. That's tiny for ML.
It really is. And yet the reported accuracy values of both training and testing were greater than 95%.
Wow, 95% accuracy with just 100 samples.
It's remarkably high for an embedded system with such limited training data. It strongly suggests this approach handles sparse data much better than typical DL would.
And that minimal data samples point, that's the absolute key for endangered species, isn't it? Where you might only have minimal data.
Exactly. You physically cannot get thousands of recordings if only, say, 50 birds are left in the wild. So to really drive this point home, they specifically tested it on 2 globally threatened birds, the forest owlet and the spoon-billed sandpiper.
Genuinely rare species.
Right. And from global databases like Xenocanto and eBird, they could only scrape together 50 clean audio samples each. That's all the training data they had.
Just 50 examples.
Just 50. And even with that incredibly sparse data, the template SVM performed significantly well. They even pushed it further, training with just 25 or 35 samples, and it still maintained impressive accuracy.
That's incredible. It shows it really can work where traditional methods would likely fail completely.
It's a potential game changer for monitoring the rarest of the rare. It opens doors that were previously closed due to data limitations. They also added a practical feature, an optional noise class. Basically, they train the model to recognize general background noise specific to the deployment environment.
Ah, so it learns to ignore the usual rustling leaves or wind.
Exactly. It helps segregate the environmental specific noise and reduces misclassifications, making the detection log cleaner and more reliable in real-world conditions.
Very smart. Okay, so it's accurate even with little data.
Yeah.
But what about practicalities? How far away can it hear a bird? And the big one, battery life. How long can it sit out there?
Crucial questions for anyone wanting to use this in the field. So, listening range.
Yeah.
They practically observed classification working up to about a 13 meters radius.
13 meters. Okay, not miles, but decent.
It's not designed to cover square miles with one unit. The strategy is deployment density. You use multiple systems across the hotspot region for an endangered species.
Create a network of listening posts.
Exactly, a web of electronic ears covering the critical area. Now, battery life. This is where the TinyML efficiency really pays off. The whole system, running constantly, draws just 9.1 milliamps at 4.5 volts.
That sounds incredibly low.
It is very low power. That works out to about 218.4 milliamp hours per day. So with 3 standard AA lithium batteries, maybe 3,500 milliamp each, they calculate it can last for 48 days.
48 days. Wow, nearly 7 weeks of nonstop monitoring on just AAs.
Yes, and that includes writing detections to the SD card. That dramatically cuts down on field visits for battery swaps.
Huge logistical saving.
And for even longer deployments, if you need months, They say using higher capacity batteries, like a 6-volt, 26,000 milliamp pack, can be used for long-term deployments up to 6 months.
6 months. That's amazing. Imagine the data you could gather over half a year without disturbing the site.
It really opens up possibilities for studying seasonal changes, migration, long-term trends with minimal human impact. And all this is possible because the system is so lean. The memory footprint is tiny, just 14 kilobs of SRAM and 149 kilobs of flash for the entire system, inference engine included.
That's minuscule.
It really is. And to put the scalability in perspective, the actual learned parameters, the weights and bias for those first 4 bird species, they took up only 2.7 kilobits.
0.7 kilobytes, that's nothing.
Almost nothing. So with the 256 KLB of flash available on the AudioMoth, they estimate they can approximately accommodate 35 more bird species.
Wow, so you could monitor a whole community of birds with one device.
Potentially, yes. The caveat they mention is naturally, as you add more species, you'd ideally need proportionally more training samples for each to maintain that high accuracy. It's a trade-off.
Sure, makes sense. But still, the potential to scale up is clearly there within the existing hardware limits. V, the big picture. Why this matters for you and the planet. Okay, this is where it gets really interesting for me. We've got the tech, it works well, it's efficient, but beyond just saying, yep, heard a cuckoo, what valuable information does this system actually generate? How does it translate into real, actionable conservation insights?
Great question. Because the tech is cool, but it's the ecological impact that truly matters, right? The system provides several key types of insights directly useful for conservation. First, as you hinted, it's density. It can determine the number of occurrences of bird species, i.e. the density of birds in a particular area.
So not just if a bird is there, but how often it's heard, which relates to how many might be around.
Exactly. It gives you a quantitative measure over time. Is the population in this specific spot growing, shrinking, stable? That's fundamental data for assessing population health and the success of conservation actions. Second, think about those critically endangered species again. Sometimes just knowing where they still exist is a huge challenge, so you can deploy these systems across different potential locations to detect bird habitats.
Use the listening posts to map out where the rare birds are hanging out.
Precisely. Pinpoint those critical zones that need protection now, maybe from habitat destruction or other threats. It helps focus limited conservation resources where they're most needed, like finding hidden treasure spots for biodiversity. And third, by looking at the timestamps in the detection log over long periods, those 48 days or even 6 months, you can start to understand seasonal migrations patterns to a location.
Like when do they arrive? How long do they stick around?
Yeah.
Do the patterns change year to year?
Exactly. Are they arriving earlier due to climate change? Is their breeding season shifting? What environmental cues correlate with their presence or absence? This long-term temporal data is vital for understanding the bigger ecological picture and for planning conservation that works across seasons, protecting species throughout their entire life cycle, including migration stopovers.
So it moves way beyond just presence-absence.
Yeah.
It's density, location, timing. It's like ecological intelligence gathering.
That's a good way to put it, giving nature its own intelligence network.
And that intelligence can directly trigger actions, right?
Yeah.
Like if a rare bird is detected in a new logging concession area, it could trigger conservation protocols. Or understanding activity patterns helps manage human-wildlife conflict. It informs habitat protection with real, continuous data, not just snapshots or guesses.
Absolutely. It creates that data-driven feedback loop for effective conservation management, replacing assumptions with evidence.
So what's next? Where do the researchers see this going?
They have a pretty clear vision for scaling this up and making it even more autonomous. One goal is to extend the system to create a species map of entire forests using multiple deployments. Imagine a dynamic, digital biodiversity map updated constantly.
A living atlas of the forest's sounds.
Wouldn't that be amazing? They also plan to integrate wireless transmissions to control the systems.
So you could potentially update the species list remotely or check device status without having to hike out there.
Exactly. Remote management, maybe even retrieving data wirelessly in some scenarios. That would streamline fieldwork even more. And the really big ambition for true long-term hands-off monitoring is to improve and extend battery life by leveraging energy harvesting.
Energy harvesting, like
Wow.
tiny solar panels on the devices.
Could be solar, could be harnessing vibrations, maybe micro wind turbines. The idea is to make them truly self-sustained systems.
Wow. Devices that could potentially run for years without battery changes.
That's the ultimate dream. It would allow for unprecedented continuous data streams from the most remote places on Earth, with minimal logistical burden and environmental footprint.
So the end goal really is easy tracking and monitoring of wildlife ecosystems with the least human intervention.
That sums it up perfectly.
Just imagine this network of smart, silent listeners constantly feeding us data to help protect the natural world, but doing it respectfully, invisibly.
It's a powerful blend of cutting-edge tech and a deep conservation ethic. It's about listening more closely to nature than ever before without disturbing its peace. Outro.
So wrapping up today's deep dive, what we've explored is the remarkable potential of this always-on TinyML Acoustic Classifier. It's more than just a clever gadget. It's a demonstration of how low-power, highly accurate systems can monitor wildlife, especially those incredibly rare species, with genuinely minimal human interference. It feels like a bridge, doesn't it? Between that unseen natural world and our urgent need to understand and protect it, it turns a massive conservation challenge into a real opportunity for insight.
It really does. I think the core achievement is taking that sparse, hard-to-get data from elusive species, often the most frustrating part of conservation, and turning it into meaningful, actionable information. And doing it all within this tiny, robust, incredibly energy-efficient package. It really highlights how smart design, choosing the right algorithm for the specific problem, can overcome huge barriers and deliver real-world impact.
Doing more with less.
Exactly, but with potentially profound results for biodiversity.
So the final thought for you, our listener, think about how this kind of quiet, intelligent monitoring could shift our whole relationship with nature. It lets us be better stewards, right? Understand the complex rhythms of ecosystems, the subtle health indicators, without constantly being intruders. What other secrets could we unlock if we could just listen in without disturbing things? Imagine tracking climate change impacts on animal communication, or detecting invasive species by their sounds super early, maybe even discovering sounds that hint at behaviors or species we don't even know about yet.
The possibilities are vast.
It's not just about birds. This feels like a template for giving a voice to so many parts of the natural world we struggle to hear right now. And it really makes you think about TinyML more broadly. It's not just about making electronics smaller. It's about how these small, smart, hyper-efficient technologies can tackle some of the world's biggest challenges, like preserving biodiversity. A reminder, perhaps, that sometimes the most powerful solutions are the quietest ones, working unseen to make a massive difference.